Good evening, everyone. I'm Brian Trumbore with your nightly review for Tuesday, June 4th. Once again, D-Train. And it's a beautiful day here in Summit, New Jersey. But construction on the house behind me is in full swing. In case you hear some noise, but it's good to see people employed. Right, sports fans? Yesterday I was at an all-day golf outing for this charity organization I'm involved in, and then today I spent a lot of time preparing a case against China. I sat down with my attorney concerning a certain investment of mine over there. I've begun working up the chain in Congress. But tomorrow will be part one of why I have finally had it with China and why the place can go to hell. I saw Donald Trump on CNBC about 2 hours ago, and he went on an anti-China diatribe, bringing up again one of his favorite topics, the Iraq War, and China ending up with all the oil after we spent trillions of dollars and lost thousands and thousands of lives. You know, he's right. So tune in tomorrow. After I'm done with the bastards, I'll probably die in a hail of bullets. But it's one way to juice traffic. Turning to Wall Street. I just want to combine some of the action of the past 2 days. Yesterday, the Institute for Supply Management reading in May fell below 50, the ISM 49 from 50.7 in April, the first decline since November, and the lowest since June 2009. But the Dow Jones rose 138 points. So today the Dow fell 77. As I see, Bill Gross is on CNBC right now, but I'll be discussing him in a bit. So the Dow fell 77 to 15,177, down 0.5%. I forgot to say that I was taping this at 4:02 p.m. Eastern Time. S&P 500 is down 9 to 1631, 0.6%. NASDAQ lost 20 points, 0.6%. Gold closed at $13.98. Oil 93.50 in the 10-year Treasury at 2.15%. Remember, on May 2nd it was 1.63%. Anyway, volatility is picking up. Witness Friday's late 200-point downdraft. But the big thing is, for this week we await Friday's jobs report. So concerning Mr. Gross of PIMCO, he put out his monthly investment outlook on PIMCO.com. Check it out. What's easy now, you can just put yourself on their mailing list. So I actually received my newsletter before Bloomberg and others had a chance to write it up. But here's the gist of it. Gross said the Fed's policies are desperately attempting to cure an economy that requires structural as opposed to monetary solutions. Central banks, including today's super quant Kuroda, heading up the Bank of Japan, seem to believe that higher and higher asset prices produced necessarily by more and more QE, quantitative easing, check writing, will inevitably stimulate real economic growth via the spillover wealth effect. Gross wrote, Low yields, low carry, referring to the carry trade. Future low expected returns have increasingly negative effects on the real economy. I don't disagree with that. I haven't for years. Credit expansion in the private economy is restricted by an expanding Fed balance sheet and the limits on Treasury repurchase agreements. Gross advised investors to reduce risk and carry related assets, referring to assets that have a higher perceived risk than securities such as treasuries or longer term debt. In Europe, actually let me just make a note on Tokyo. The Nikkei rebounded 2% today after falling 3.7% on Monday to a 6-week low. It's all over fears of a global economic slowdown, which leads to concerns over the uncertainty about demand for Japan's exports and whether or not the monetary policy that Bill Gross refers to has a positive impact at all on the Chinese or on the Japanese economy at the end of the day. I have China on my brain. In Europe, manufacturing sector, their PMI rose to 48.3 from April's 46.7 in the Eurozone, highest level in 15 months, but it is still contracting below the 50 dividing line between growth and contraction. It's been contracting in the Eurozone for 22 months in a row. At least it's not worsening. Germany's PMI rose to 49.4, up from 48.1 in April. Spain, 48.1, up from 44.7 in April. That's the best in Spain in 24 months, but again, still below 50. Greece is up to 45.3, a 23-month high, but that's obviously still putrid. Though there are some signs in Greece that are favorable. Italy, 47.3, up from 45.5. France, 46.4, up from 44.4. You see all these numbers and you can see how you come up with a Eurozone composite of 48.7. Excuse me, 48.3. In the UK, retail sales rose 1.8% in May from a year earlier. That's for stores open at least a year, so that's not all bad. European Central Bank President Mario Draghi said yesterday the economic situation in the euro area remains challenging, but there are a few signs of a possible stabilization, and our baseline scenario continues to be one of a very gradual recovery starting in the latter part of this year. In China, HSBC released their May reading on manufacturing in that country, 49.2, down from 50.4 in April, the lowest since October. The government's official PMI for manufacturing, which was released over the weekend, came in at 50.8, up from 50.6 in April. The government figure supposedly focuses more on state industry, while HSBC focuses more on the private sector. In an interview in Latin America, where he is traveling before his summit with President Obama at week's end, Chinese President Xi Jinping said the fundamentals of the Chinese economy are sound and growth is on a more stable footing. The official government PMI for the service sector fell to 54.3 in May from 54.5 in April. That is the lowest since September. 45% of the economy in China is in the is comprised of services, up from 41%, 45% today, up from 41% in 2003. In U.S., services account for 90% of our economy. In housing, Gene Epstein of Barron's had a good little column. Check it out. Housing's hollow comeback. Without Uncle Sam's aid, the market probably would be much weaker. Mr. Epstein points out that this housing recovery has been so stuffed with government steroids, you wonder if it could make it on its own if these drugs were withdrawn. Ask the average person what share of new home mortgages are guaranteed by government, and he or she is unlikely to estimate anywhere near 91.6%. And yet that is the actual figure as of the first quarter based on data from Inside Mortgage Finance. The insurers and guarantors include the Federal Housing Administration, the Veterans Administration, and the government-sponsored enterprises, Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. Among the major entities, Mr. Epstein points out that where the FHA and VA are concerned, the down payments required are minuscule by conventional standards, ranging from 0% to 5%. According to a recent FHA report, the average down payment required on its insured mortgages in the first quarter has been a little over 4%. The VA's rather chilling, that's the Dunkin' Donuts truck if you can hear it, the VA's rather chilly statistical category called no down payment indicates that close to 90% of its home loans normally enjoy this status. That's rather remarkable. Two last items. Today, President Vladimir Putin says Russia has not yet fulfilled a contract to send the sophisticated S-300 air defense missile systems to Syria, but Putin defended the deal, saying it isn't against international law. It's just that Russia hasn't fulfilled the contract yet, but that it would. Even as the U.S. and Israel have strongly warned Russia against delivering the missiles to Syrian President Bashar Assad. And regarding Turkey and the protests there, I'm going to have a lot, if not later in the week, certainly in my Week in Review column. I will just say I'm very familiar with Taksim Square, where the main demonstrations in Istanbul have been taking place. I stay at the Grand Hyatt, which is about a block away from this rather large square. It's also just a couple block walk from the world's greatest military museum that I've enjoyed 2 or 3 times. They have nice concerts there as well. It's a beautiful little spot, but I always remember Taksim Square because one time I was walking through it at night and this little boy comes up to me. He goes, shine your shoes. And I was walking with a stern face, acting like I knew what I was doing. Not Joe Tourist. And I looked down at him with disgust. Didn't say anything. I think I just shook my head. And he goes, "Why not?" I just thought that was so brilliant. I kept my straight face. I did not let him shine my shoes, but obviously I'll never forget that the rest of my life. And I think that was about 9 years ago. And I just wonder what the kid is doing today and if he's one of the protesters. Well, tune in tomorrow. China goes down. I'm Brian Trumbore. Take care.